Guess let me throw out a question to you. What's been the hardest part of setup so far? What have you been getting stuck on the most? And maybe we can start there. Okay, we got a question. I don't want to have the agent fill out the intake form, but I do want to use it. How do I set that up so I can use it? Sure. Let me share here. And just for some feedback, why don't you want the agent to fill out the form? Is it a belief that you might lose an agent or that they're going to get mad because they have to do something? Or is it more of a procedural standpoint? Yeah, and while I get this up, I can just show you, I can tell you from past experience, we onboarded with our first application, we onboarded about 3,000 people, agents with our first company that we were working for, and we got all but 2 to use it. The 2 that didn't use it, we actually raised their fees. So instead of charging $400 a transaction, we charged them $450 a transaction to go ahead and input their information, and they were okay with that. So just a little bit of past experience for you guys. Okay, so on here, let me show you under the add property here. You have the ability to fill out the intake form for the agent. So you can just click on this intake form, and what it's going to do is it's going to pop up all your intake forms over here. So you can just select whichever one you want. It's going to pop it up on your screen, and you can actually fill it out for the agent. So when I click on this, it's going to pop open this. The only 2 things that are going to be different, because they're not filling it out from an agent portal, so we don't know where this is coming from. So you're going to have to assign the team and the user. So this is the only 2, the big difference here. And then you can assign the agent as well, so that they can still see this in their app or, in their agent portal or wherever. So that's how you do it. If you have any further questions on that, let me know. But it's pretty easy. Just go ahead and set up your intake forms as normal in the hammer icon templates. Go over to intake forms, add new, set up your intake form. As soon as you set it up. Now, one thing to be careful of, the name here it might be different. So buyer intake form, this is the outside. Let me edit this, and you can see on the inside, it's called buyer intake form. But if I called it buyer intake form 2, let me just show you what happens here. So this is still buyer intake form, but over on the agent side, they would see the title buyer intake form 2. So just a little tidbit. A lot of people don't notice this up here. This will be displayed at the top of the form. So it gives you the information on what this is. But so now if I come back over to add property, now I can just go down to intake form and take care of whatever intake form I want to. So hopefully that answered your question, Dan. Let me address the second part. I'm afraid they'll fill it out wrong. I don't think they will do it. Oh, where'd that go? Okay. I'm a bit of a control freak. Yeah, that's what we hear most of the time. I can tell you that your life will be a lot better if you have them filled out. I know a lot of people do just fill it out for accuracy, have the TC fill it out. There's a lot of advantages to having the agent fill it out, but maybe just try it with one of your really good agents and see. And you'll probably like it. Honestly, it does take a lot off your plate, and agents do most of the time fill it out right. Yes, are there always going to be mistakes? Of course, but you can check those versus having to go through the whole contract to input those. I think it's a better option, but like I said, it's 50-50. Okay, any feedback on best practices to track outgoing referrals if we want to be able to track our referral process with another agent? Is it best done here? I think that it's probably best done in their CRM, but you could do a referral in here. You could come over to your contacts, and let's say Elaine, you want to mark her as lead source, and then I may have one here, referral, and then you could put who the referral's from, either in the I'd probably put it in the contacts and the notes. I'd probably put in the notes who that was from, and then I would mark it as a referral, so I would know to go to the notes and see who that referral is from. But a lot of the CRMs have a little bit more automation around the source. And so if they're using like a follow-up boss, there's a lot of cool things that you can do in there with referrals. So I would probably, you may want to fill it out here just so but I would do a lot of the automation on the referral through like a follow-up boss or somewhere like that. Best way to add business info to a new contact. When I add a contact during intake, I would like to use save title information, address, even though that is a little bit difficult right now, the way that happens as far as adding business information that's already existing to a contact through the intake form. What you may want to do is add that contact before you submit the intake form, and then go ahead and just add that person to the from the database. It's really not that much more time. We'll be working on contacts and businesses and things like that in the future. That's one of the things that we will be addressing. We just have some more pressing issues to get to first. But as it is here, I would come in here, add Elaine, put her information, apply a business, and then apply the business information here. Now go back over here to whoops, sorry, I hit the wrong button. Go back over to properties and then go ahead and add your intake form. Now that person's already going to be in the database and you can just add that person from there. So let me shut off a couple things here so I don't get these beeps. All right, cool. Go ahead and follow up if you need any more information on that. Compliance files. Many companies require complete compliance files to include docs, communication, et cetera, to be filed with the broker. Do we have any options for that here? As far as docs go, one of the things that is on the list for the future is to be able to pull out, you can still do it because you can do the Google Drive. So if I go to my documents here, you can set this up to any document that comes in here bounces over to Google Drive. And then there's tons of options over in Google Drive to kind of package those up. What we would like to see for the future is to be able to say, download all of these at one time. What you could do is you could select all and merge them all, I guess, and keep one big file of all the documents. You could do that. As far as the communication goes, that's a little tougher. I would probably put, if you need to do that for like a California where you're keeping stuff for a long period of time, what you may want to do is when you're in your file, in your template emails, make your line or your BCC line like an email. Just create an email in Gmail, like compliance email or @gmail.com or something like that. And you can copy that person on every single email that goes out of the system. Like we have one called BCC on all transaction emails. That's buyer side, that's seller side, that's every email that goes out of the system. What you can do is just stick that into a separate email address, or maybe you have an email address that you use for something like that may have a filter on it that automatically goes into a folder in your Gmail or your whatever Outlook or wherever you're using. You could do something like that. That's what I've found best for that sort of thing. Also, you could do the Folio add-on. If you guys are using Folio, they do have a nice little add-on where it'll keep all that communication kind of grouped into the transaction. It's not perfect. I have seen it leave out some emails here and there, but it is a pretty cool little thing that you can do. And depending on how many transactions you have, it might be free. All right. Is there a way on the intake form for the agent to add notes that will populate in the notes section of the transaction? So I'll show you what I do. When you're setting up these intake forms, let me go to intake forms here. We'll go back down to that buyer intake form. Okay. So what I do at the bottom of each section, and this isn't my account, but at the bottom of each section, I'll put a text area box here, and I'll say, transaction dates, additional information. I'll have another one here, property access, additional information. And so as that agent's going through the intake form, they can type whatever they want. So like property access, they may say, hey, there's, 2 Rottweilers in the garage. Don't use the garage access code, or, whatever those little notes are that you might need. I add a text box to each of these sections. A lot of people just wait till the end of the intake form. There is a box in there, and then they just copy and paste. So here, let me just show you. So when you go into a transaction here, and if you fill out that box at the bottom of the intake form that says, do you have any additional information for your TC or whatever that says, that information is going to pop up here, in here, and then you can just copy and paste that over to, if you wanted to have a big notes box up here or something like that. But that being said, I like the way that I do it. It's worked really well for our team and also for the TC company. Is when we had a box here that they could type in on every single thing. That way, you know, this note is about transaction dates. This note is about this. This note is about this. And you can kind of keep it separated so that when you're looking at the escrow details or you're looking at, you know, inspection details, you have those notes right there and you're not having to look through, you know, 2 pages of notes that you may have on the file. All right. Can you show me what an active listing might look like in OTC? Yeah, there's really no difference, honestly, Kelly. It's just that the status is active. So what you would probably do is have an intake form, and that intake form is going to be a listing form. Let me see if I have one in here. No, but you would have just, you know, listing intake form. And so what they would do is when they get that exclusive right to sell the property or whatever you guys call it in your state, they would come in here and fill out a form for the listing. So then you would come over to the properties and you would have a listing here, and you would know because this could be, this would be active. Okay. And then when you get ready, so the way that I prefer and the way that most people are doing it on the system is they're keeping one for listing and then one once it goes under contract. And the reason we're doing that is we're changing this to pending, and then we're creating the contract to close file through another form that comes in with all the contract to close information on it. The reason we're doing that is because as we get out of this current market and get back into a more stabilized market where you're having, you know, that 8, 9, 10, 11% cancellations, all you have to do is just go ahead and cancel the file with the buyer on it, and then go back up here and change this pending to active again. And now you already have your active listing file ready to go. So once it closes, you can just close it out. Some people delineate that by putting like a listing at the end of here, or, you know, you can actually type in that property. Here, let me show you here. So this right here, this is the contract title. Oops, sorry. It's the contract title. You can actually type in here like listing if you wanted to. Now, be aware, if you're using this contract title merge field for like a subject line in your email, things like that, then just know that anything you type in here is actually going to be put into that merge field. So just be careful if you do that. So you could do listing in C2C or something like that so you can keep them delineated. Obviously, when you come over here, you're going to want to have your tables and segments. So you're just looking at your active listings, or just looking at your buyers under contract, or just listing at your listings under contract. So you can use these tables and segments to just look at what you need to look at the time. And that way there's no confusion on having 2 with the same name, because you're going to be able to tell over here the client type. You can add in other table columns here. You may have a field for, I don't know if it's a listing or if it's a contract close or whatever. So you can add any field you want. And then you can update this so that it shows when you select this table or this segment, it's going to show a certain amount of fields here. And they can be different on every one. So a table, this table could show certain fields here, or certain columns, I should say. And then when you click on the segment, it will totally change these if you want it to. So you can set each table and each segment up with their own table columns that are visible during this. All right. And Kelly, if that didn't answer your question or you want more information, we can go through that kind of individually. I have no problem doing that, but I'm just showing you the way that most people do it. Now, just one more little caveat to that. What you could do, I don't necessarily agree with this because you eliminate the form in this case, but what you could do is come into the listing and you could either duplicate this listing over here. You duplicate it, or you could just change it. And if you're on our trigger, if you're on our automated trigger system, then you could have triggers in here to say, when it goes pending, add these fields, add these fields, add these fields. And then you could just have one big transaction for everything. I think it's a little bit more confusing. I don't think it's as useful because of the dynamic intake forms and how much they give you. But if you're not using the intake forms for your agents, then you may play around with either a duplication or just changing this to under contract and then working out of here through our triggering system. Yeah. And you could have it through, I guess you could have it through tasks too. Now that I think about it, you could have a task here that, hey, property went under contract. And then the trigger might be add this template, add this template, add this template. It's just going to be much more effective if you're using the conditional based triggers. Okay. Could I see a clarification on how you set up dates using number of days, such as option period is 5 days? Right now, I have the agent enter the option period expiration date. However, if they could just show 5 and the dates auto-populate, that would be great. I know it's doable, but I'm blanking out. But sure, yeah, that's actually one of the best features of this program. A lot of programs just don't have the ability to do custom things like this in their fields. So let's start in fields, and we're going to come down to, let's just try to find something here like inspection. Okay, so inspection period. So there may be a date up here that this is going to calculate, but you need to know how many days. In your state, it's option period. Let's just say this says option period instead of inspection period. Same thing, just a little bit different. So, and you said 5 days. So if it's 5 and in the contract, let's say the boilerplate is 20, what you would do is you would come over. Now you have to create this number field, the days field that I just showed you. So you're going to need a field, and that field has to be a number field for it to show up. So you're typing a number in there. Okay. Now I come over to date templates, hammer icon templates, go down to date templates. And let's see if we can find one that's not, okay, this is fine. So this is the date that you're calculating. So the date that the name that you want to give it is probably going to be the date that you're calculating. And then let's just say the inspection period typically is 10 days. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in 10 calendar days after contract acceptance date. But in your case where you want to type in 5, all you would have to do is have the agent type in 5 into this. And now this 5 is going to overwrite this 10. So it's saying, hey, it's not 10, it's whatever's in this number field. So 5 is going to be here. So now it's just going to calculate 5 calendar days after contract acceptance. And the way that's going to look in a transaction, I don't know how much is in these transactions, so forgive me if we don't have one in here, but let's find inspection contingency. So the way it would look here, because you would have that contingency on there, would be, this would be 10 because that was the boilerplate, but the number field would have been inspection period length, okay? And so let me just stop there. I'm not even gonna go into these weekend rolls. You can roll it back from a Saturday to a Friday if it lands on that, or roll it up, or you can skip federal holidays, do all that sort of stuff. But let's just focus on this. So it's gonna calculate 10 days after contract acceptance for this date, right? What was my issue here? What did I not fill out correctly?
Looks like you don't have a date calculation time frame.
A date?
Go down 2 more. Up. Yep.
Oh, right here. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, after contract acceptance. Okay. So now you have 10 calendar days after contract acceptance, unless this is filled in. So we'll go ahead and save this. And now here's the contract acceptance, and it calculated 10 days. But now remember, we said we only wanted 5 days. So let me see if that field is in here. Here we go. So now I'm going to come down here to this field length. And now this could be in the intake form. So this would already be filled out, but I'm just showing you kind of real time how this works. So now 5 days, we're going to update that. And then we're going to go up here, and you can see that that just changed to 5 calendar days instead of 10. So if I changed it and I heard, oh, we have an addendum, actually now they want it to be 15 days. You just update that. And because the date template is already set on this property, now you have to remember that the date template has to be set either manually or through the intake form so that this can calculate, because now it's going back to that date template and asking it how to calculate this date, because you may have multiple date templates with different calculations depending on if you're in multiple states or if your business days part of the time, calendar days part of the time. But now you can see I put 15 in here and you can see that updated. So now it's 15 calendar days after. So hopefully that helps, Craig. Okay, can you go over setting up email templates a bit more, like how to think through who should this email be sent to when you're doing the initial setups? For example, if I have an email that that need to go to my marketing person or BCC on all transaction plan, how do I know I have that set up correctly in my email template? Sure, okay. Sure. Yeah, let's go over there and let's take a look at an email template. Okay, so again, hammer icon templates. We're going to go to the email templates, and you really do have to think through these. up front. If you don't think through them up front, it does cause a little bit of like, if you make a midstream decision, like you're 2 years into this and you're like, hey, I want to BCC myself on every single file now. Well, it's a little bit painstaking. You might want to get a VA or hire someone off Fiverr to do this, but because you're going to have to go into each one and go to your BCC and find that role and say BCC on all, I don't know if I have all transactions in here. No, I don't, but that's okay. We'll just say all seller, you'll get the point. But anyway, you would have to come in and check that. And then you'd have to do that with every single email template that you had if you're switching midstream. Now, that's the good part about most people setting it up now. You want to kind of think through that. Do I want to copy myself or copy some other person on that? Then you can create a custom role like this is my compliance email. And you could actually have a role called compliance email that you're checking on every single email that you create. And that way, when you send this email out, it's automatically going over to that filter or that other email address or whatever you decide to do. Okay, so when you're thinking through this, the things that I would think through is I would take this top to bottom. So who's this email going to? This email is going to go to, I don't know who this email is going to. This one's going to the buyer. Okay, so it's going to the buyer. Who else would I have to copy on that? Well, I want to copy anyone that I have CC on all buyer emails, obviously, which would be like maybe a mom and a dad helping a son buy a house for the first time. They're not on the contract, but they want copied on everything so they can advise their son on, how to get through this smoothly. This may be, it's going to the escrow officer, and over here you could do CC on all escrow emails. The other way you can do it that we were talking about yesterday is you can go through and say, escrow assistant, escrow this, escrow that, all the different people in an escrow office. The reason I don't is because I don't want to have 50,000 roles in there. I don't want lender processor, lender underwriter, lender this. Now, you may prefer that. You may like that detail in your contacts of a transaction to see who's the processor versus who is the underwriter versus who's the assistant. You can definitely do that, and you can do that through notes as well. So I don't get too particular on here. I just put CC on all lender emails. So I can group all those people and I can just stick them on there so that they're getting a copy of all the emails, but I don't really need to know that they're the processor every single time I send out an email. So whoever it's going to, you're going to want to think of what CC do you want on here? CC, and that's why I simplified it, but you may say, I want to have lender processor, lender underwriter, lender assistant. And in that case, you would have to check all three of those just in case one of those exists and they want copied on this. The thing that I tend to do is the CC on all, because here, let's give you a scenario. You have a lender, you have two lenders that you're working with on different deals. One lender only wants the emails to come to him. The other lender wants the emails to come to him and his assistant. The cool thing about this now is you can put the assistant in on the one file and mark their role as CC on all lender emails. The other one you could just put in there as lender assistant. And now they're not getting copied on everything. So you would actually have that person in there twice, you could, or you could just have them in there once, depending on how you want to think about it and how many times you want to enter that contact. It's really easy to enter a contact in a property, so it's no big deal to enter them twice. And that same person can have two different roles, one to get the email and just one so you know who that person is, or you could just go down the route of CC on all and put a little note that this person is the processor or the assistant or whatever. And then the BCC, I don't use this too much, but I will use it for like agent training. Maybe there's a new agent on a team that I work with, and the team is like, hey, it'd be really great if you could kind of teach them how a transaction runs. Well, you could put that person in a BCC on all transaction emails. And now that new agent can kind of get a feel of the flow of the transaction and start asking good questions about, well, why did you send that? Why did you send it now? Why was it urgent that this had to happen? Why is it urgent that that had to happen? And now you can kind of explain that process so you can spin up these agents in a lot quicker time. The other thing you can do is on text too. You can also send them like a text message. And if it's a newer agent, you could actually add a paragraph about why we're doing what we're doing, because that why is going to get them up to speed quite a bit quicker than if you're just sending them the how. So, and then in here, as far as smart blocks go, let me reread your question, just make sure I'm hitting everything here. Okay, one other thing that I will touch on. So if you're going to want to CC your, let's say your marketing person on every single email, what you may want to do is have an email going out in your approved by internally approved. And then what you can do is have an email in your intake form to your marketing person. So once it's internally approved, that email will automatically shoot up to your health bar and let you know that, hey, you need to send this. So you'll just have to click send on every single one. Now, another way to do it would be in your tasks. You could have a task for send opening emails. And in there, you could have that email to your marketing assistant. And since it's your marketing assistant, you could make that an automatic send, because you're not worried if it's the same email going out over and over and over again. You're not worried if you make a mistake internally with your team. Your team could come to you and say, hey, this email didn't make sense. And you can be like, oh, I need to update that. But what you don't want to do is automatically send emails to agents or clients that could potentially not have a smart block or merge field in it, because now you look like an idiot, basically. So internal stuff, you can send internally. External stuff, you just want to take a pause and see, is this something I really want to do? So, okay, let's see. Another thing you can do that we were talking about yesterday, came up with this a while ago, is in your intake form, you can have a question. And you could have a question like, how many buyers are on this property? So if I have a buyer form, only I'm filling it out for the buyers, I could have a question that says, how many buyers are on this form? And if it's 2, well, let's go down to one where we have some form conditions. So we go to these form conditions. And let me get these things out of my way so I can see my whole screen. Okay, so I could have a question here that says, how many buyers are there? Buyers are equal to 2. Well, if buyers is equal to 2, then go ahead and add buyer, add. So anytime when you're filling out this form now, and someone says there's 2 buyers, 2 required buyers are going to come into the contact section of that intake form for you. Now you'd have to have a couple of these. You'd have to have buyer equals 1, buyer equals 2, buyer equals 3, buyer equals 4, up to, I've had 8 one time. That's probably the highest I've ever had. You could just do 4 if that's most common. But now, you're making sure that these get required in your intake form, and your agents aren't going to miss them, or your TCs aren't going to miss them when they're filling out that intake form. That they know that they need to put all of these people's contacts in, not just the head person, because there's 8 people on the contract. So just another little tip. It's kind of cool. You would have to add in a custom field called how many buyers are on this, how many sellers are on this. And then in your buyer form, you would have all the buyers in your form conditions. On the seller form, you would have the sellers in your form condition. And so just another way to make sure that you're getting the correct information up front. So that was a long question that you had there, Carrie. So if I missed anything or you want clarification on anything, go ahead and just post up another one. Okay, I have contingency dates set up to automatically populate. If a contingency is waived, how do I do that? Yeah, so you do that through the, so you're filling out the intake form, man. So what you would do is you would just have a trigger that says only bring in, well, actually you wouldn't even have to do that. You would just say, if contingency is waived, take out that whole field section. So like, let's say it's inspection contingency. You would say, so here are your fields. Let's pretend this is inspection. You'd have all your inspection fields here, and you would have a question, inspection period waived. Well, if it's waived, then your trigger would say, remove field section. So let me find a field section here. Okay. So just imagine this says if inspection period is waived as the condition, not these 3, then you can come in here and say remove, and then this would be your inspection fields. Because if your fields, and this is kind of a long way to go around to get to your question, if the fields don't exist in the property, they're not going to calculate. Okay, so you can still have your date template. You can have a very thorough date template with like 30 or 40 dates in there. And the way to make it not trigger is to just not put in the field. So if the field doesn't exist, it won't trigger that date. And it will show up as kind of a grayed out condition. It'll be grayed out if that field doesn't exist. So that's how you do it. All right, that was all the questions. That was good. Those some rapid fire questions there. Let me just, I'll go further into Ann's question so that while we're waiting for more questions, because I know that can get a little confusing. Oh, sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out what phone that is ringing. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let's go into a transaction and 1, 2, 3, 4. I think Beverly actually has I think we have a date template attached to this one. Let me open up some of these. Okay, let me actually close that. So here are my dates, contract acceptance. Let me go into the additional deposit. Yep, we got it marked as 20 days, calendar days after this. So what would happen is, let me just go down here and close this. So if additional earnest deposit or escrow deposit didn't exist, it just wouldn't calculate. So you come up here and this would all happen through the form. You would have this stuff happen automatically, but let's just say it got through somehow. All you have to do is say manage property fields, come down here to additional. You can uncheck that. And now you can go ahead and close it. And now that field's not calculating. So now your dates, if you have a date template based on that field, it won't calculate. If you have other things based on that field, it won't calculate. So that's the way to get around that. Okay, let me add that back in real quick. I'll go here, actually here. Okay, go ahead and add that back in. And once you add it back in, it calculated because it still holds that information in there. There's just like an invisible wall. That's the best way I can describe it between your fields that are in the transaction and the fields that are not in your transaction. So a lot of the times, like if you have a trigger and let's say it's if an additional escrow deposit is not blank. Well, if this field isn't in the transaction, it won't fire off that trigger because it knows that there's this invisible wall between the stuff that exists in the transaction and the fields that do not exist. If it does not exist, it will not fire those triggers on you. So as you get into more of the automated triggers, just know that that's the way to do it. You're removing fields that you don't need so that nothing accidentally triggers. Okay, how does color coding work? Can you be a little bit more specific? Are you talking about on the fields? Are you talking about on the contacts, on the color balls? Give me a little bit of, and I can go through them all, but just tell me what specifically to make sure I can hit that a little bit harder than the other one. So obviously in the task, you have the color ball here. You just need to come up with in your head what these mean. So these are here for you and your team to come up with, hey, blue means this, gray means this, black means this. You guys just need to come up with some type of SOP on that. And then you can even write it in here. Go through them all, which color? Okay, sure. So these fields, or I'm sorry, these color balls are for the tasks. You also have these new color balls on the field. So let's just say that, let me find a good one here. Let's say my disclosure and reports is like, I need to get this back today and this agent isn't getting back to me. That's something that I would probably want to come in here and make a high priority because now before the end of the day, my TCs know, hey, you have to come up to your health bar and clear out all the red before you go to sleep at night. So no red before bed. When you come in here now, because I marked this a high priority, now that field will be listed in here. So I'm going to clear all this red out before the end of the day. This is kind of a bad example because I use this and I don't ever send this stuff out, but you would have much less obviously in your red. And then you could come down and maybe this is the only one. So let me do this. Take out some of this stuff. Okay, so you would come down here to disclosure and reports and see this is red. Now the agent gets back to you, sends you half of it and not the other half. Well, then maybe you leave it in here, or maybe they send it all to you. All you have to do is just uncheck that high and now you're done. This is going to disappear the next time I refresh this page. So if I close this out and click on it again, and I come down here to the fields, you can see that all those fields are gone. So anything in red, and now you can come up with whatever meaning you want for high, like for documents, high priority means that I need to get that document by the end of the day. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. Like if it turns red, that means that there's something very important to either check on or acquire. This may be, hey, I need to go through these tomorrow and move them up to high if I haven't seen anything. Low is just something to kind of keep on your radar, like, hey, I do need this information, but it's not super critical. Or you can use it the way that we use everything else, which is due today, due tomorrow, due in 2 days. Now, these aren't automatically going to fluctuate with the days like the other ones do. So you kind of have to keep a little bit closer eye on your tasks, or I'm sorry, on your fields, on your notes, and on your contacts. So let me just go through the rest of these really quick. So documents, you got your documents here, and you got your color balls here. Now this is different from the priority. So this is just a color ball that you can come up with whatever meaning you want. Over here on the priority is where you can click and make this high. I need the, they forgot initials on page 3. So I'm going to put a note on this document, and I'm going to mark it as high so that when I come in here, I'm going to be able to see that document and know that I have to take care of that before the end of the day. Contacts. Maybe you don't have contact information for someone. You could come in here and put, I know his name's Morty, but I don't have any of this other information. You could come in and type in Morty, and then you could go over to the priority and mark him as high so that you get that information from the agent by the end of the day. Or maybe it's someone you need to follow up with. Maybe that's the way you do it. Like, hey, I need to follow up with this guy today. Then this is red. Fields, contacts, documents, those are new additions to the colors. And you're going to want to use those in a fashion of kind of high priority, medium priority, low priority on what you have to do. Now, you do have a lot of flexibility on what those red, yellow, or red, gold, and blue mean, because you can come up with those priority meanings for yourself. And your team and my team may have totally different meanings, but as long as everyone's on the same page, you should be good to go. Okay. Let's see what else is here. Okay, so do you use trigger templates combined with task templates? Or do you have the master trigger template and pull the whole thing into the transaction? Is it best to have one trigger template or trigger template? Okay, great question, Melissa. So here's my theory on it, but a lot of people have different theories on this. I use triggers mainly. Will I use tasks? Yes, but only for like one-off situations, or maybe like, just something that comes up during the transaction. I'll go ahead and fill in a task so I don't forget it. But my triggers are going to be pretty much the whole thing. Basically what I did was I took all my tasks and said, okay, on this task, what am I doing? I check it off. I have to send this email. I have to send this text message. And now I have to update this field, or I have to update this template or whatever. So then I just think, okay, now how do I turn that into a trigger? Well, I go over to my triggers and I say, if these 5 things are true, send this email. Now I'm going to have a separate trigger for the text, and then I'm going to have a separate trigger for the template. Things that I would say, things that are kind of out of the ordinary, one-off, or maybe it's like updating a field for right now until we get some more upgrades in here. That type of stuff could be tasks. The other thing you can do with tasks is you could have milestones. So you could have like appraisal contingency met, whatever. And you could have those as dates so that they update over in the client portal. That's a good use of those tasks. Another thing you can do with tasks is leave a date off of it. So like this, let me go over to tasks real quick. You could have a task with no date, unscheduled, and you could say terminated contract. And you would only use it if this contract terminates. Now, when you come down to these with no date, you would actually you could put in a date, or you could just check it off, whatever you want to do. But you could put the date that it terminated, and then you could check it off. Now, in this terminated task, you may have remove all my templates and now put in my terminated task template, the things I have to do if the transaction got canceled or terminated or whatever the case may be. You can create a bunch of unscheduled things that have triggers in them. And the only time you ever check them off is if this task, whatever's in this task, like canceled transaction, actually happens. When you check that off, get rid of all your other templates, bring in your tasks that you need to do for a canceled transaction. So that's the way I use tasks. But I would say 95% of the people on the platform actually are task-based. I think that once you get your tasks and you start learning the system and really understand how the system works, how you can take it to the next level and get rid of another 50% of your time is to start transferring over to triggers, because triggers are super powerful, because now you're not having to come to a task list every day or your task pipeline. All you're doing is waiting for fields, contacts, and documents to update, which are going to say, yes, this condition's met. Yes, this condition's met. Now let's tell Andrew that he needs to send this email. So now the system is telling me when to send the email versus me having to go over to a task list and say, yes, this was done, check it off. Now it tells me that I need to send this email and this text message. I want everything as automated as possible. Now, if you're first getting on the system, please do not do that right off the bat. That is probably a bad idea. You want to get used to the system. You want to work the way that you have been working and then improve upon that. A lot of people get on the system and they're like, oh, we have smart blocks. Let's go add 50 smart blocks right off the bat. Hey, we have this. Let's go add this right off the bat. Just work the way you work and then slowly improve upon the system so that you don't get overwhelmed. You know, sometimes we get a bad rap for the setup being hard. Most of the time it's because people are trying to jump to step 10 instead of just, you know, work the way you work now. And then this month we're going to add in intake forms. Next month, we're going to add in some smart blocks. Next month, we're going to add in this. That typically keeps the stress levels down and makes it a lot easier to acclimate yourself to the system. So sorry, that was kind of a long-winded way to go around trigger templates and task templates. But yeah, trigger templates will definitely take it to the next level. I mean, you're probably going to cut off another 3 to 5 hours off your transaction, which is really cool once you get in there and start seeing that happen. Okay, sorry, back to the number of days question. Is there a way to make a field always contingent, or do I have to go to the option date every time make? No, I'm sorry, Craig. You know, I knew that was going to confuse some people. What you're going to do is you're going to have a date template that you're applying to a transaction. So if I come over to the hammer icon and go to my date templates, these would already be preset for you. So you would have a date template in here, and it would have a list of maybe 20 dates that you're calculating. Now, they don't always have to always come in. Remember, if that field doesn't exist, it just won't calculate. So it's okay to have a really lengthy date template of all the different dates. Like if you see mine, I have, you know, if I get a solar addendum, I have 5 days to respond back to the seller. Well, I only have solar on like 5% of my transactions, but I want it in here because I don't want to have to set that date. I don't want to have to go, okay, it's the 22nd, let's go 23rd, 24th. I'm counting on my fingers to put that date in. That's not a good use of time. You have all of your dates from all of your contract and addenda in here. And that way, if it does apply, it will calculate. Now, if you are in a state like Washington, it's very difficult to do this because they use calendar days half the time and business days half the time. Or if you're working on Zillow contracts, and you're in a state like Arizona where we do calendar days, but then when you do a Zillow contract, all of a sudden that turns into business days. Well, now you're going to have 2 date templates. So you may have an extra question, which is this a Zillow contract? Is it an open door contract? Is it an offer pad contract? Is it a residential, just standard state contract? I'll have a date template for every type of contract that I do. And that way I don't have to go and rearrange things and manually change things. I know if it's a Zillow contract that it's going to be this set business days, and then I can fill in my number of days to automatically calculate that. So looks like you got it, Craig. Sorry to confuse you. Yeah, date templates control that. It comes in, it automatically calculates everything. If that date isn't there, then it just won't calculate. Okay, how do parent and child tasks work? Hey, Shane, are you around?
I am, yeah.
I should drink water. My throat's getting scratchy. Can you,
Yeah.
if I go over to task, can you handle this one?
Yeah, I just don't have control of the.
It's okay. I'll do it. Just give me a second. I got to get a drink of water.
Okay. Let me see here.
Okay, I got it.
Have control of it.
Okay, so in here you have a task. You can set this right here. So you can say set this as a parent task. And let's just say that contingency received, we'll have to find this one, but let's just go ahead and set this. So this is a child of, and now it should have set the parent onto contingency received. So now these two are connected. So here, let me just show you, I forget which one I did that on. What did I do it on?
You did on the first one, task 1.
Oh, task 1. Okay, yeah. So if I check off this task now, it's going to say one or more of the task conditions have fit. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
It put it down to the second position.
Okay, cool. Here, let me, there you go. Child task cannot be closed before the parent task. So now your parent tasks are going to have to be closed. So I'm going to have to come down. So this is just basically giving you a fail safe that you need to come and check this task off before you check off that child task. So now I can come and check this task off. And that's fine. It's going to fire my triggers and do all this good stuff. And I apologize on the speed here. We're on Zoom, so it's going to take a minute. But so that just fired something up to my health bar. But now, because that task is done, now I can come and check off this child task. And now it's going to let me go through that progression. But as you saw, it wouldn't let me check off that child task before I got that parent task done. So if you have any follow-ups on that, let me know.
Yeah, one of the good things about that as well is if you are pushing a date, because sometimes you have the option to push a date to the child task. So that way, if you close the parent, once a parent is closed, then it can inherit the date onto the child task. Oh, did I come through on that?
Nope, you did. You're good. So, and you can see here, if you click on this, you're going to get the information on what task the parent-child is happening on, and you can also unlink the task as well. So, cool. We're out of questions. We're about 13 minutes from the end. So if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and post them up in there. If not, we'll go ahead and end early. I'll give you guys another 2 to 3 minutes. And anything else that the team can think of, any questions we've had recently on support that keep coming up over and over, anything that we can go over really quick while we wait for a couple more questions?
I was actually wanting to expand on the parent-child task a little bit. If you want to pull up the full, like the date settings, right? So you use the link that's like kind of a quick link for attaching those. But if we go into the full one, there are a couple different ways you can do it. Well, let's see here. So right here, conditional date calculations. We can have none where you're just going to plug in any old date. You're going to manually plug that in. The property date is going to be based off of one of those date fields. So 3 days after the closing date or whatever that might be. And then for the task, you can do the same thing. That's really what I was wanting to call out is you can attach them a parent-child task. Okay, it's going to be related to this task. But like Shane was saying, this one's going to be due 2 days after I completed this other task. Yeah. So you do have like a lot of options there.
That's actually a good point. This makes it a lot easier for people to understand. We get a lot of parent-child questions, but when you get in here and think about it this way, I think it's a little bit easier to comprehend. It's, hey, okay, I want to base this task, so whatever this task is, off of this task. And I want to make it so it happens 3 calendar days after this task. So now you can see that this task is controlling this task that you're making right now. I think it's just a little bit easier to kind of compartmentalize in your head. If you go into the, and I clicked on the calendar here just in case anyone didn't see that. Let's see here. Let's see. How do I get this off my screen? Why is it not leaving my screen here?
See if you can go off to the right where it says close.
That was weird, a little glitchy. But yeah, I clicked on here on the date options, and then that's going to give you the ability to either do no date, like we talked about earlier for like a cancellation task, or base it off a property date, so 3 days before closing, or another task 3 days after I send the opening emails, I need to do X. Yeah. And this is kind of a cool thing too, that a lot of people don't know about. This is, if I'm working on a Saturday, okay, and, or just I'm working today, but for some reason, I want the close date to be different. The date that I closed this, I can actually set it for the 24th and I can update that. And so now this task is going to look like it was closed on the 24th. So if you're working on a Saturday, you can set it for a Monday or however you want to do it. Another question. When does the $299 plan come out? Shane, do we have an update on that?
That's a good question. We're currently working on just getting everything installed for that. I'm hoping for sometime around the 1st to 2nd week of July.
Okay. Yeah. Let's say, we'll definitely have it out by August 1st. But yeah, we're working through some stuff on that. So, and that $299 plan is going to be super powerful, and we are going to change some things. We have quite a few things we're going to change on our pricing. Our pricing isn't really going to change. It's just the way that it's set up is going to change. So we'll have another webinar probably on the updates on the pricing plan as well. But you guys won't be charged any more for your subscription unless you're going to add the scale plan. So all of our current plans correlate to the new plan. So if you're on the premium, now it's going to be called the Grow. If you're on the premium add-on, then it's going to be the Pro. And then if you're on the beta for the automation plan, now that's going to be called the scale plan, and it will be out of beta, and it will be $299 plus the $69 per user. So Okay, another question about number of days. I had my template set up to calculate off number of days, but it no longer calculates. Quick refresher on how to set that up. So Rhonda, I'd have to dig into this with you. This seems like a little bit more complicated than just off the cuff, but one of the things that we see people when they're not calculating, it's because of the time they're triggering in the intake form. Can you just post up there real quick if you use intake forms? And I'll just go on with the explanation just for other people that are using intake forms. Now, okay, she does not. Okay, so let me think. And are you applying a date template manually? Is that how you're doing it every time you're doing a manual transaction and applying a date template manually? I guess I'm assuming that would probably be the way. Okay, so we just have to take a look at that. There should be no reason why. Maybe we'll look at your date template. Maybe something got screwed up. If you did change a field label in your field, sometimes that affects the date template. Like it will break the date template because now the field isn't the same one that you originally used. So that's something we can look at. If you are using intakes, another thing to watch for, if your dates aren't calculating, but you can actually click on the date and then hit update and it calculates, that means that you have the trigger point at the wrong location. You're triggering it too late, I guess is the way to put it. So if anyone has questions on that, feel free to email support. I can get you a real quick answer if you're using the intake and they're not calculating. It's just the arrangement of where you're triggering your date template versus where you're triggering your field templates. Your date template should always be last on the agent submission portion, okay? I've said that wrong in the past. I've said it always should be last, but it should be last on the first approval process for the agent or the TC filling out that initial form. And then you can trigger it off the approval stage, but it's a very kind of personal decision on how you have your workflow set up and how you guys, when you check documents, do you check them before it becomes a transaction? Do you check it after it becomes a transaction? If anyone's having trouble with that, reach out to me and I can go into specifics on that. So we make sure to get that right. Rhonda, send an email to help@opentoclose.com and let's take a look at if you could send a video, just a dummy transaction, you don't even have to fill out that many fields, just fill out a couple of fields, show us how you're doing it, show us how it's not calculating, and I'll dig into it and get you an answer back quickly. Okay, 5 minutes left. Let's see here if there's any other questions. Oh, perfect. Thanks, Rhonda. Okay, 6 minutes. Any other questions? We got, I'll give you another 60 seconds to get them in. Otherwise, this was a good one. Thank you for all the questions. You guys were active this time. This is kind of what we want to see. The reason we're doing these is so you guys can get unstuck. And I know you're running across things while you're building the system, while you're improving your system. There's always those little things you wish you just had someone that knew the system sitting right next to you. Well, that's what these Wednesdays are for. So, definitely ask your questions when you have us available. All right, it is quiet. I see the chat's lit up, but hopefully those have been being taken care of.
Yeah, there's just asking if we were going to have a recording on this.
Oh yeah, every single time we do these, the recording will be posted in the, there's a special section for Wednesday, Workshop Wednesdays in the knowledge base. And Ann said these Wednesday Zooms are fabulous, so appreciate that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's just nice that, you can kind of save up some things that, are kind of just making it difficult on you. These are great for strategy too. So you can ask me a lot of strategy questions that maybe the support staff is more of a how, like here's how to do it. The implementation and me were more like a why. So while we can answer your hows on these for sure, this is a great place to come for your whys. Why am I even doing this? They're like, why am I setting up teams by roles instead of by individual people? I've had that question a couple of times. Like, why can't I just assign this task to Cindy? Well, if Cindy gets fired tomorrow, then you want to be able to pop another person in there really quick. So that's the reason. So a lot of these little strategy things that normally you wouldn't necessarily think of, this is a great time to get those questions answered, because once you understand the why behind the system, it's a lot easier to do the how. If you understand why you're doing, a lot of people are just kind of going through the paces of watching a video, plugging stuff in. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. And they never get a full concept of what's the advantage to me doing it this way. And so some people say, well, I don't want to do it this way. But if they heard the why, they would say, oh, this is going to benefit me 2 months from now. Let's go ahead and set it up the right way the first time so that I don't have to change things 2, 3, 4 months from now. Okay, no questions came in. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate all the questions. This was awesome. We will be back next Wednesday, same time, same place. Shane will probably be taking the lead. I will be on vacation, but we will have this. We'll get it recorded and we will get it posted up in the knowledge base by tomorrow afternoon. So thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Bye.